What is up, you guys? My name is Nick, and welcome to my channel, where I cover all things entertainment. Whatever you're watching, I'm making videos about. And every month, I'm taking a look at all of our favorite streaming services to find the best recommendations for you guys. And I'm gonna warn you, right off the bat, this list is all horror and thriller. I'm sure that really won't disappoint anyone if you've made it to my channel, but hey, just putting it out there. Plugging future content already. I'm putting together a video on the best horror on Amazon Prime because it's been like 6 months since I've done one of those, and I already have it broken up into 2 videos because you might know they have a gajillion movies on Amazon Prime. So this list is kind of like the horror movie rejects, but in Halloween season, you might want to check them out just to have a good time. Number 10 is Fear.com, a horror thriller about a New York City detective investigating deaths linked to a website called Fear.com. It is trying so hard to be 7 and just ends up being pure 2000s cheese. This movie is so bad. I was just rewatching it, and the editing is so bad. It's like worse than my videos. The characters are terrible. The writing is just, all this movie, it's not a good one. This should be my bad movie recommendation of the month. So it is. It's a bad movie. However, it is creepy and it's trying so hard to be disturbing. And if you're an early 2000s kid, well then you probably are familiar with that creepy poster image that, yeah, it would get me. It would got me. Obviously, your mileage for this one will vary, so, you know, if it looks like it's for you, it's for you. Number 9 is Pacific Heights, a thriller starring Melanie Griffith and Matthew Modine as a couple who buy a fixer-upper, so they rent out some of the rooms to make money for renovations, and this leads them to taking on Michael Keaton as one of the worst tenants of all time. It plays out like a typical stalker or creepy kid thriller with our antagonists doing these progressively worse things to our protagonists, but this might sound boring, but I think there's a really interesting subplot where our characters are trying to get rid of him through the legal system, and I always just find it interesting when there's some entertainment that spotlights how, you know, messed up the system is and how you can get screwed real easily. I'm telling you, this one is slow, it doesn't have a lot of action, but it'll certainly make you think twice about ever having a roommate. Number 8 is Fright Night, an 80s horror comedy teen favorite about a teenager who knows that his neighbor is a vampire, but no one around him believes him, so he enlists the help of a television horror host to help him take out the devilishly charming villain. I have to admit, I don't love this movie as much as a lot of other people do. I do see the fun with this one. It's very 80s. It's very funny. It's lighthearted. It's a good time. It's certainly good enough to recommend. I just rewatched it recently, and if you're looking for some cheesy 80s flair, Fright Night is the pick for you. Number 7 is Lake Placid, a creature feature comedy about a monstrous crocodile terrorizing a lake in Maine. A group of specialists try to stop the body count from rising, but mostly just spend their time bickering with one another. This is one I owned on VHS and watched a lot as a kid, and I'll admit, it does not hold up very well at all, especially not as a monster movie, but I think as a late 90s comedy, there's still some fun to be had with this one. I'll admit it, I'll rewatch this movie just for Betty White and the cows alone.
Is this the man who was killed? He seemed taller.
Number 6 is the Rage Carrie 2, another movie that came out in 1999. I know that it came out over 20 years after the original. It's barely connected. It pretty much only exists because of the late 90s horror boom, but I unironically enjoy this movie, so let's talk about it. Rachel is an isolated teen girl who discovers she has telekinetic powers after being bullied by the school jocks. It all leads to one hell of a party where Rachel gets her revenge. It's the same formula as the original Carrie, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So listen, this is what I really like about this movie. It tackles the topic of rape culture long before anyone was willing to do so. I think that's actually why this movie had such a bad reputation for so long. I think people are discovering it or rediscovering it now and going, you know, I think there's actually something to it. And I'm one of those people because I like that this movie explores the power dynamics of high school and how you have all of these rich kid jocks who are running around. Oh my god, they're like practically getting away with murder. They have this ranking system for all the girls in the school. Everyone's really trying to cover up for their actions. Meanwhile, their victims are being sidelined and screwed over. I think this movie broadens the scope of bullying and tackles some larger and more deep deep-rooted issues, and it isn't like extremely well explored, no, but I think for a teen horror movie, it does a lot more than most. Plus, all of the kills at the end are really good in my opinion, and Rachel is one badass horror heroine that we should not forget. Even though, I mean, you know, she's also a mass murderer. She's kind of the villain, but she's also a heroine.
Man, we missed another killer party.
Number 5 is Resident Evil, the first adaptation of the popular video game series. This zombie action horror follows a group of soldiers who head to an underground laboratory after a viral outbreak leads to all inhabitants being turned into zombies. Badass Mila Jovovich will have to take on a horde of monsters, as well as a supercomputer hell-bent on making sure there are no survivors. I would truly love an actual adaptation of the video games, but that's a discussion for a different video. What we have here is another movie that I watched a lot as a kid on TV. And you know what? As bad as it is, we don't get a lot of action horror. So if you're in the mood for some dumb fun, pop the popcorn, pour the wine, you're in for a treat.
You're all going to die down here.
Number 4 is The Strangers Prey at Night. This slasher sequel follows a family staying at a summer resort trailer park during the off-season. The titular strangers show up and begin hunting them down one by one. I have a complicated relationship with this movie because I absolutely hate the original. I know a lot of people like it. I just don't. And I was equally disappointed with this sequel at first. I thought it was gonna be like a fun slasher, and it kind of is. I enjoy those aspects. And I do have to be a bit revealing for a moment that I grew up in a trailer park, and I always thought it would make a great setting for a horror film, especially a slasher, because you just have all of these little homes and community buildings everywhere, and if it's cleared out and empty, that's like a horror movie playground. I love it. But again, I was pretty disappointed with most things in this movie. It falls back on slasher tropes way too often, with dumb characters doing stupid things. It's just like, how on earth can you just be this you know what? Justice for Christina Hendricks. But I do have to admit, this does have some aesthetic value that keeps bringing me back to rewatch it, because although it's dumb, it does have its fun. And I mean, the pool sequence, you know, there's some fun horror imagery throughout the movie. Number 3 is Climax, an A24 horror film from director Gaspar Noé that's loosely based on a real event. A dance troupe in the mid-90s hang out at an old schoolhouse to party when someone spikes the sangria with LSD. Some experience euphoria as others descend into hellish madness over the course of one wild night. I can really only recommend this to people who are familiar with Noé's work in like art house horror, because it is hyper realistic in that much of it was improvised by the actors on set. The first half hour at least is just dancing and then people having conversations, exchanging graphic sexual references for the most part. It doesn't have that one part where it just turns into a full-blown horror film. If you're looking for that to happen, I just want you to know before you get invested, it doesn't really go there. However, there are plenty of other small, disturbing moments throughout the film. If you want a blood and guts gore fest, you're gonna want to pick something else. But if you want an A24 film, this is A24 as fuck. Number 2 is The Addams Family. This comedy, based on the 60s sitcom, is about a macabre family living in a creepy old mansion who deal with an outsider claiming to be a long-lost relative. This is a staple for spooky season. I just did a double feature, watched this and Addams Family Values, which is also on Prime. It was great. They're fun. Also, I know no one's gonna want to watch it, but I have to put it out there. They also have the original Addams Family series on the service, which I think is a spooky fun time. Number 1 is The Love Witch. Last but certainly not least, this romance horror is about a witch trying to find love, but she ends up leaving bodies in her wake. It was written and directed by Anna Biller. She really made this movie. She like made the costumes and everything. Full on did it. It's amazing. And it's a very aesthetically driven film. It looks like some kind of like late 60s European art house horror. But this is one of those rare instances where I would say that the style actually suits the substance very well. It's so perfect. I know it's not going to be for everyone. You're going to say it's too long, it's boring, there's not enough gore, whatever. I don't care. This is one of my all-time favorite movies about witches. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I greatly appreciate it as always. Please let me know your favorites in the comments below. I love to hear that. And yes, I've got some more horror on Amazon content coming. I hope you're looking for some good recommendations for spooky season. I'm putting together a list of underseen horror movies on Amazon Prime that I'm really looking forward to talking to, because while trying to find, the best, I watched a lot of garbage. Some of it ended up in this video, but there are a lot of hidden gems that they're going to be fun to talk about. So make sure you're subscribed. Be on the lookout for all future uploads. Feel free to follow me on Instagram if you're interested. Hit that bell so you see when I post. That is it for this video, but I won't stop you from watching another.